This is HBR News number 438. Go woke, get broke, then go broke again, then get rich. DEI head grifts millions. Meta, that's the virtual VR space, Meta Grape, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. All right, hello everyone and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian and I am joined by my lovely co-hosts Mike and Hannah. We are discussing the news of the week from a Badgerly perspective, or at least the stories that I found interesting. So stick around, it's going to be a good time, and I hope you're ready for some really massive cringe, so prepare your spines. This week we're going to be talking about, there was two stories that might be related of DEI cuts and a woman cutting a little off the top at DEI, a DEI head. There is also a woman who was culturally enriched, let's say, in the metaverse, which is the new virtual reality prison. Interactive space that we are that Mark Zuckerberg is working on from his underground bunker in Hawaii, and more. So stick around. It's going to be a good time.
There's already more people living in his bunker than there are in the metaverse.
Yes. So stick around, it's going to be a good time, and be sure to join us afterwards for our patron only show. We have this is not the story. Where is it? Oh yeah. So you guys might have heard, this is from Fandom Pulse, which a friend of mine, John Delarose, has created a website, a new sort of pop culture website for creative types and people interested in cultural things. And this story I saw just the other day. There was a child prodigy that beat Tetris. You guys heard about this? Did you hear about the genius?
No. I did, and the reaction was the typical 90s woman reaction to gamers.
Yes.
Lol, look at the dumb retard with his games.
Yes, exactly.
Before it turned in the direction of, lol, the cake is a lie. Why won't anyone listen to me?
Yes, right. So that's what we're going to be looking at. An article from Fandom Pulse about that. Tetris child prodigy gets too good, which is there's a lot of people that are just having trouble getting good. So, and hits an impossible kill screen in 38 minutes while mainstream media laughs off his world record. So just another case of, boy tries really hard. Grown-ass adults that just can't they can't even let him have that. So we'll talk about that in the patron show. If you want to join us in the patron show to look at this article, please consider becoming a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you'll be able to participate in all the additional content and the community there. They're generally very supportive, and there's lots of stuff going on all the time. And we have lots and lots and lots of additional content there. So that's feedthebadger.com to set up a monthly subscription. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we've been yeeted from the internet by the, let's say, legacy media from their Hawaii bunkers, then please consider following our website, honeybadgerradio.com or badgerfeed.com. That's where all of our content is archived and lives. So without further ado, let us get into today's stories. To put this up on the screen, where is my write-up? Hold on a second. Where's my write-up? Where's my write-up? Did it disappear? Oh, it's right here. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm spacing out. There's a lot going on. So first thing, actually, I don't even have a write-up for this. I have this story that I'm going to read through really quick. Massachusetts teacher says she is very proud to have removed Homer's Classic from school curriculum. What was that?
I said dough.
Yeah.
Someone had to say it.
A Massachusetts teacher said she is very proud to have removed one of Homer's classics from the school curriculum. Wall Street Journal's Megan Cox Gordon revealed in a column that critical theory ideologues, school teachers, and Twitter agitators are purging and propagandizing against classic texts, including Homer's The Odyssey. Gordon highlighted that in 2016, a Seattle English teacher tweeted that he would rather die than teach the Scarlet Letter under the hashtag #DisruptTexts. So there was the Scarlet Letter is another book. Okay. The biography of Twitter account at Disrupt Text says it's, quote, a movement to rebuild the literary canon using an anti-bias, anti-racist critical literacy lens, end quote. Shea Martin, that on her Twitter account that has now been restricted to those who do not follow her already, said in June. And here is a picture. Of course, this is what they look like. Why are you surprised? Be like Odysseus and embrace. Is that how you say it? Odysseus? That's how I used to say it in school. It might be Odysseus.
Nobody knows ancient Greek is a devil.
Yeah.
that was the one about the Trojan War, right? That was the one with the Trojan War.
The Odyssey is after the Trojan War. Like, isn't it? Odysseus is. Well, it is. But
the Iliad is the one after that, where what's his name with the heel was just
Achilles.
Achilles was just whining about what happened in the war. I thought the Odyssey was the one about the actual war. I can't remember. I mean,
I think Achilles dies in the Trojan War, actually. But
oh shit.
Yeah, but like Odysseus is he's on the journey, he's on the return journey, right? And his wife is being wooed by all these guys, and he's trying to get back to his family. And all the way he runs at all these obstacles, like the Cyclops and the Sirens and all this. And Odysseus was like the first, or at least one of the oldest, like thinking man's heroes, where he was like outwitting everybody. He wasn't necessarily strong or like a great warrior, but he was a really intelligent guy. That's what I know about the Odyssey. But I think Iliad is the war. I think that one takes place first, and the Odyssey is Odysseus's trip back. All I know is that Odysseus is the only character Sean Bean played that he didn't die. So. But anyway, it was in that movie Troy, which I absolutely hated. I hated that movie. The one with Brad Pitt. Sorry, guys. I don't know if you liked it. I didn't like it. I hated that they took all the mythology out of it. They basically made it just like as realistic as possible. They disenchanted it. I hated it. I prefer Clash of the Titans or any of those old Harryhausen, like Jason and the Argonauts and stuff. I like that. But anyway.
But it's sort of telling that they didn't stop at Christianity.
Well,
they never take the piss out of Judaism or Islam. No. They've gone straight through Christianity, and now they're heading for the Roman religion. And it is a religion. These are religious texts, and they were very much considered religious texts to the Romans. And now they have to go
Greek. But I know what you mean.
Greek. Yeah.
But anyway, so. But I think there's a deeper reason. It's not only Christianity they're attacking, but let me finish the write-up here. So Heather Levine, a 9th grade English teacher at Lawrence High School in Massachusetts, replied, "Ha ha ha, very proud to say we got the Odyssey removed from the curriculum this year." Her tweet is currently unviewable as she also restricts her Twitter account. Gordon contacted Levine to confirm that the school removed the Odyssey from the curriculum, but was told her injury was invasive. The English department chairman of Lawrence Public Schools did not return Gordon's multiple requests for comment. We know what the Odyssey is about, so that kind of sums it up. So I guess before I give my thoughts, I wanted to get yours.
Well, it's pretty obvious what's actually happening here. Like this isn't about diversity, equity, inclusion, or any other thing like that. It's about dumbing people down. Right? If you can't remember your history and you don't know how to go through writing that is older, where the speech is very different from what you're used to hearing, and understand what's being said, or use reference materials to help yourself understand what's being said, then when people have different dialects, different slang, even in the same language, you can't understand each other. So if you take away like any of the old classic types of curriculum, any of the very old texts that we used to study for things like understanding the hero's journey, understanding setting and character and all of those things, all the things that your English teacher is going to ask you questions about in regard to these stories, and in particular, stories where people show true greatness by taking great risks to achieve great rewards and outsmarting great enemies and finding both violent and non-violent ways around their problems, then you are pretty much in a mental position where you can be told what to do and you have none of the tools that you need to question it. And that is the real reason why these things are being removed. It has absolutely nothing to do with diversity or any other modern agenda other than keeping our students from learning and developing the tools that they need in order to assess the value of what they're being told by their self-titled betters, and just accepting that, well, these people are the leaders, so we got to do what they say.
Yeah,
I don't know which is worse, that they're erasing it or that they're turning everyone into black people. Because that's going to happen soon. They're going to do the Netflix version of the Odyssey, where all the evil male gods were white and all the female gods they just didn't exist, because you can't have female gods because that might suggest that women are equally responsible for anything that happens. We got a bright future ahead of us, folks.
My primary issue with this is that, well, for one, I have a few things. The Odyssey was one of my favorite stories. It was why I think I fell in love with the idea of stories and adventures based on reading. And I mean, I read about the labors of Hercules and story of Hades and Persephone and all these, but like the Odyssey was my favorite, and first of all, that's a real shame. And I think that this is another thing that's worth pointing out is that these stories of Greek mythology, they tend to be very attractive to boys. Boys like learning about three things, man. They like mythology, they like the planets, and they like dinosaurs. Now, we can't pretend like planets and dinosaurs don't exist, so I guess they have that. But the Greek mythology thing, I think it's deliberately to take something away from boys. And I say that because I worked as a teacher for a while. I saw what the curriculum was for reading. There was no literature that I was familiar with. Like when I was in school, I read Catcher in the Rye. I read All's Quiet on the Western Front. I read Bram Stoker's Dracula. I read Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I read Frankenstein, classics, Treasure Island, The Time Machine, and of course, stories like the Odyssey. Hell, we read through a sort of, well, I guess like the best, and most understandable translation of Beowulf. We read Shakespeare and all this stuff, right? We did plays. And I think that of course, to get boys in particular excited about learning, you have to give them content that they're interested in. Like you have to you have to cater to their particular interests so that they get the sense that reading is good, so that they'll do more of it. When you take this stuff out, they will, and Hannah's 100% right. They'll tell you this is for this or that purpose, to like be more inclusive. But it's obviously not what's going on. Like, I'm a Puerto Rican boy. I was in class with black kids, Asian kids. There was an Indian kid. We all love the Odyssey. We all love Greek mythology. Even the girls liked it. It wasn't even really exclusive. So it's not about that at all. But I do think it's about taking whatever you can away from boys. We've already talked about how the education system, as it exists, and it's not limited to public education, like charter schools, private schools, even Catholic schools, they're all kind of like, whether they want to or not, whether they know it or not, they're all operating from the very similar baseline, because the problem is the baseline that they're operating from. So you can go to a charter school and maybe you'll get lucky and have like a really great teacher, right? But odds are it's designed to educate girls primarily, boys secondarily. Boys are either going to adapt to that or they're going to fall behind. You can look at the reading scores. Boys are doing terrible in reading comprehension and among other disciplines. And a lot of it has to do with, again, their way of learning and the things they're interested in are not brought to the table. And one other thing I'll say about this is that in the article, it talks about it from a racial critical perspective, like critical race theory perspective. But make no mistake, all critical theories are basically spawned from the same hellish womb that is feminist theory. Like, if it weren't for feminist theory, all the other theories wouldn't even be a thing. And I mean, even Marxist theory, which is sort of like what some people say would be the root of that, did not take off in the West. Like, people were like, I like owning stuff, but women, that always works. And so you can just you create the wedge with feminism, and then you make everything else happen spawning from that. And so, like, this is not about, I mean, it's not only not about critical race theory, it's not even about like black people. It's about like essentially educating, and I put that in quotes, a population that is going to be dependent on statism because they're not educated, they can't read, they're not self-sustaining, they don't have any ambition, they're discouraged from doing anything on their own, and so they'll grow up to be statists. I mean, like, I saw a video today of like a Zoomer complaining about people saying that, oh, why are you expecting me to work a 9-to-5 job, and I'm not making enough money or whatever. And I'm like, well, if she looked like she was in a nice car with like an expensive coffee in her hand. So it's like, well, you could obviously live within your means, but I understand that you're being set up to feel like a dependent, to feel like a victim. That's how you create more feminists. Like, that's it. You make them victims when they're young, and then they grow up thinking, well, I can't do anything on my own. I can't need a man. Men are scary. I could get, something could happen to me because men are so dangerous. I see it everywhere. So I got to do this on my own, but it's scary because everything costs so much and I have to work so much. What am I going to do? Oh, wait, the state, they're coming in to take care of me. They're going to pay for everything. They're going to give me a house. They're going to give me health care. They're going to give me, a television. They're going to give me a cell phone. They're going to raise my kids. Right? And so, like, that's where it's gonna go. I mean, like, it pains me because I feel like young people, when I did the subbing thing for about a year, and I talked to a boy that was reading something that he hated, was some, like, I never even heard of the story. It was like some story about like relationships with like animals and stuff, and I was like, this is what girls read. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but he wasn't interested. I was like, have you ever read an adventure story before? And he was like, I didn't even know that those existed. So, I mean, that's, it's
that's
just
heartbreaking.
It is, right? I mean, like, this is the thing. Like, can you imagine, like, in how much time would it get? And it probably is already there, where you can approach a child and say, have you ever read the Odyssey or heard of it? Do you know who, like, Ares is? Do you know who Achilles is? Do you know what the Cyclops is? And if he doesn't like know a video game that has those characters in it, I mean, he might not know. He might not know where it comes from. It's like, this orphaned culture that he might see, like, oh yeah, there's a Cyclops on Fortnite, but I don't know what a Cyclops is, right?
This, by the way, is why He-Man was so popular in the 80s.
Yes,
it's difficult to explain this to millennials, let alone Gen Z. There are a lot of parallels between He-Man and Greek myths, because that was similar. He had lots of enemies that, I think one of them was a Cyclops. One of them had
the Triclops. He had 3 eyes, yeah.
And yeah, boys got well into this. And boys all over the world, they bought. I had 50 of those fucking toys. And it was great because you could conduct your own wars. You didn't even have to remember what happened in the propaganda cartoon or the advertisement cartoons. You could just make your own wars with each of you playing these things together. And then Mattel went, oh, this is going great. Let's get girls in on it and create She-Ra. Which is what pisses me off about how pissed off people got about She-Ra being made woke in the 21st century.
Well,
She-Ra
was always too, but yeah.
Well, but She-Ra was always meant to be that, and you can't get too pissed off about anything that happened with He-Man because it wasn't.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It wasn't created driven in the first place.
If you've ever played with a She-Ra doll, it was basically a Barbie doll with like swords. So you still combed her hair and you dressed her up. It was very similar.
Yeah, it was Mattel trying to get girls in on what was primarily popular with boys, and I think it mainly worked because boys liked it too. Like girls don't want toys that fight with each other. They want toys that have tea parties together.
Yeah, actually, most of the girls I knew kind of rejected Shira when I was growing up. I was the only one that thought she was cool, and the reason I thought she was cool is because she got big and strong, right? She was able to do strong things, and not just she wasn't just eye candy. Like Barbie was supposed to be eye candy. Barbie was interesting in that you could use her to explore fashion ideas and stuff, but Shira was actually, a doer. She, like Barbie maybe had jobs, but Shira was actually, she fought, she did everything. And so it was more my speed.
Yeah.
And nobody else kind of got that. There weren't very many. I didn't meet another girl who was really into Shira until I got to college, by which time we weren't really watching much cartoons.
Well, at least in the days of He-Man and She-Ra, they acknowledged men and women. Now, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think you could do He-Man and She-Ra. You'd have to make a Zera or something. Or
It would be... Yeah, it would be
went ahead and
me
did that,
fan, because you couldn't say me man, so it'd have to be me fan and Mira,
or you
and then you
he
could be
ma'am.
intersex.
It is ma'am.
We already have he ma'am. It's ma'am.
He ma'am.
But yes.
Yeah.
The other thing that I should probably point out, because I heard somebody mention Conan, and the boys that I grew up with, there were several of them that never would have enjoyed reading if the Conan series hadn't existed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when my brother was little, he was very kinetic. You couldn't get him to sit still for a lot of stuff. He wasn't, everybody was like, oh, is that ADHD? No, that's being a little boy. It's just being a little boy. ADHD is a whole nother level of kinetic, right? It's you literally can't sit still even when you want to. He could when he wanted to, but he wasn't the kind of kid that was going to sit down and study something unless there was something in it that compelled him. I could be entertained by the text on the side of a cereal box, but you had to really gain his interest. So Mom got him a couple of different things like that. She started out with comics because, little boys and comics, like hand in hand, right? And then she got him to get him to read the Bible, she got him a Bible comic book. It was the Bible. It was thicker than my Bible.
Yeah.
But it was in comic book form. And he went through and read about every single war in the Bible first thing.
There's a lot of war in the Bible.
Yeah, there's a lot of war in the Bible.
There's a lot of war.
And it was all
Bible.
Portrayed in comic form. And it was really good. For a little kid.
Somebody get Mel Gibson to adapt that shit into like a movie.
Yeah, that would be cool, actually. They should make movies about every war in the Bible. Some of them are
I want to see people turn
bizarre.
to pillars of salt.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Well, I see that on Twitter every day. Like anytime I get into an argument with a feminist, the next thing you know, look, there's another pillar of salt. Oh wait, that was just coming out of their eyes.
That's funny.
But yeah, she got him Conan, the Conan books, and Jack London, like bunch of different stuff that was written by Jack London, and he got into reading.
Yeah, well, these people don't want boys. They don't want anyone really educated, but they certainly don't want boys educated.
Yeah.
I think this
they don't want
program
boys. That's
to weaken
the first
boys
thing.
starts very, very early.
They want boys to not be boys either.
Yes, of course. Hence, look, I've seen it. Like, all I'm saying is I've seen it. I've seen boys feminized in school. Like, I'm talking 8, 9, 10, and I'm like, what happened to you? And like the schools I worked at, they weren't like super like progressive public schools. They were normal schools, but the teachers there were just following the curriculum. And there's no men that work there either. That's another issue, right? There are no male teachers. When I was there were people, like, the only men that worked there were either in the administrative levels or they were like security guards. That was it.
Yeah.
Coaches, maybe?
I grew up in a family with male teachers, and male administrators in the school system. My dad was a teacher. My uncle had been a teacher. He was a school principal. I had another uncle that was a teacher. And of course, my aunt and some of my cousins also were teachers, and my uncle, the principal, married a teacher. So there's a lot of teachers in my family. My dad had to, even in the, I want to say the 70s, still had to fight, even back then, for female teachers to recognize boys' learning style and boys' learning needs. And he had a student that was behind, really, in his reading and was having a difficult time, but he would read muscle mags, not the muscle as in your body muscles, but the car muscle, like the muscle car mags. And he would read, about repairing motorcycles and about repairing cars and all that kind of stuff when he had free time in class. And they used to do a thing called silent sustained reading. And that's what he would pull out. You were allowed to read anything you wanted. And so Dad would give him library time in the classroom when the students had downtime, and he could check out those kind of magazines from the library and work on a report from that. And when the students were doing like their reporting on this or reporting on that, book report, writing a report on a subject or something like that, he could use those. And it helped him to increase his reading level. He was testing higher and higher. And the librarian started getting annoyed that he was always checking out these automotive tech magazines that she saw as a waste of his time because it was all about cars and stuff. It was just for entertainment, in her opinion. But he wanted to grow up and be a mechanic. So she never learned anything about this guy. She just told him he couldn't check those out anymore. He had to come in and check out something more intellectual.
Yep.
As if reading about mechanics isn't intellectual.
No.
And my dad
intellectualism is such a bullshit term now.
Yeah,
another book that I loved as a kid, some other books that I got really into at school, it would always create a crowd around it, is the Guinness Book of World Records. Oh, yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. My dad had to fight for this kid's right. The librarian actually made a rule. He couldn't have those. My dad had to fight for the kid's right, and he had to go to the administrator and say, I am assigning him work that requires him to use these because it is advancing his reading level. What are we trying to do here? Punish him or advance his reading level? And so he literally had to go head to head with this librarian in order to protect the student from having his one avenue to increasing his reading level taken away.
Yeah.
The one person who should have understood it didn't, because she was a woman.
Right. And apparently, like, ideologically, like, possessed, like, not able to see boys as having different interests. But,
right.
But we got to move on. But the last thing
that was the final point I was getting at with that, was that with the dearth of male teachers now in the schools, guys like that are going to be screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. The one thing I was going to say lastly is that this is one of my favorite things about Vivek Ramaswamy, who has consistently said that he's going to if elected, he will completely, take a chainsaw to the public education system. And I think, it's the only thing he can really affect. So, it's not like I want to go and get rid of Catholic schools and charter schools and private schools, but it is a start, because that all has to go. Education has to be completely gutted and done all over. There's way too many activists in that space thinking they can engineer children. Who was it that said, give me one generation of your kids and I'll, I think it was Lenin or something, or Mao, I don't know. It was one of the commies said that, but
it was Aristotle who said, "Give me the boy until he is 10, and I'll give you the man."
Oh yeah, but there was a communist that said something different, but borrowed from that, I assume. So,
but it's a truism in any.
Yeah.
It is. But they know.
Honestly, the first thing that needs to be done to the education system is that the federal Department of Education just needs to be completely dismantled, and it needs to be handled locally.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let the states figure it out. Anyway,
Afuera!
Let us know what you guys think about this in the comments.
That's one thing. Apparently, Javier Milei has made it legal for parents to homeschool their children. And I heard this, and I'm like, wait, it was illegal?
Yes.
To homeschool children, it's illegal.
The left is trying to make it illegal
not
here.
To send your children to government propaganda schools. How the fuck was that illegal? Jesus.
They're trying to do that here.
Mm-hmm. Well, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. Let us move on to the next story. So, according to British police... No, wait, I'm looking at the wrong thing. We're going to come back to that. I'm sorry. Shortly after the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, many companies made commitments to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. Google CEO Sundar Pichai pledged to increase underrepresented groups in leadership roles and, quote, more than doubling Black representation in non-senior positions by 2025, according to Forbes. However, Google is backtracking. CNBC reports that many DEI programs are seeing significant cuts. As cited by Forbes, quote, Google decided against hiring a new cohort for its early career immersion program for underrepresented software engineering talent next year. The company also laid off some staff supporting this initiative. End quote. Google also cut roles managing partnerships and recruiting for underrepresented groups and reduced learning programs that aim to foster inclusion. Beyond Google, there has been a decline in DEI investment across the tech sector in 2023, with diversity-related job postings dropping by 44% year over year.
I can only assume there's a great deal of outrage being kicked up about Google being a racist company now. Yes? Surely the usual suspects will be up in arms accusing them of trying to keep the black man down, and especially the black woman, of course, and perpetuating a culture of white supremacy and Asian supremacy, and especially Indian supremacy. You know the people who typically and overwhelmingly apply for jobs in the tech sector. Your hiring practices are not allowed to reflect those numbers. After all, you need to tailor everything towards demographics who seem generally uninterested in it. The people who are not all that interested in learning to code should be the ones doing your coding. Is that not working out in reality, Google? Now that you've been doing it for a sufficient length of time, you're beginning to realize that it's a fucking retarded idea. Oh, you didn't know? You couldn't possibly have known how retarded it all was. It's not like anyone was trying to tell you or anything. See, I seem to recall a young man named James Damore tried to warn you about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you didn't take too kindly to him. You didn't just tell him to fuck off. You didn't just sack him for voicing his concerns when specifically asked to voice any concerns he might have had. He was persona non grata into oblivion. You made him famous. He was included in all manner of fiendish lists of dangerous right-wing online influencers who are damaging your children in some way. I wonder where he is now. Probably out there somewhere coding for a company who appreciates and always has appreciated someone who's capable of talking sense. And as I recall, the issues Mr. Damore outlined were focused less about the notion of racial diversity and more concerning the gender diversity thing. He tried to explain why women are less inclined to learn to code, and that it's not because of misogyny and patriarchy. It's because men and women, by and large, are a little bit different. I can't help but notice that the argument has moved on from that and into the realm of racial controversies. And while y'all are having a wake-up call regarding that, you've completely forgotten where it all started. And it hasn't even occurred to you that it was feminists who started it. And that there are still feminists infecting your company, putting useless thoughts in positions they have no business occupying. And until you kill that head vampire, you're going to keep going around in these eccentric circles. It's no coincidence that it always happens in that order. First it's women, then it's everyone else. Like, it so pisses me off that right-wingers are always complaining that it's white people that are under attack, it's Christians that are under attack, and heterosexual cisgendered people that are under attack. Yes, and who's attacking them? Feminists. Because nothing is ever good enough for feminists. They replace your board meetings with white women, and then they work on replacing your blue-collar dogs' bodies and your skilled workers with black women. After that, they replace everyone with transsexuals and non-binaries and what have you, and they keep going until the whole company goes bankrupt. That part of it is a relatively recent phenomenon, and it's only experienced by large companies that are too big to fail enough to not fail until then, because they're the only ones rich enough to afford to be able to go that far down the rabbit hole. But the bullshit that women put small companies through has been going on since the 90s, the 80s, the 60s, probably. It's since halfway through the previous century, if not earlier. They get an entry-level job, then they get themselves knocked up, and then they sue you for not giving them enough maternity leave, or they just go on the prowl for men they can accuse of sexual harassment because, I don't know, because they have a calendar pinned up on their desk full of, I don't know, libertarian women wearing aprons and showing their ankles or whatever. You need to take this back to where it started. Hiring people based solely on merit does not make you racist. It makes you a company that is interested in succeeding in whatever endeavors in which it endeavors. Hopefully you understand that now. Well, guess what? It doesn't make you sexist either. If a woman is the most qualified candidate, you should hire that woman. But if she is a feminist, do not hire her. She is not qualified for anything except maybe being a teaching assistant in a gender studies course that shouldn't even exist in the first place. If you hire feminists, they will do everything they can to gut your company from the inside out, up to and including this race baiting bullshit, all of which is a distraction. It's always been a distraction to keep you arguing about race, so you never notice that you've already succumbed to the sex baiting bullshit. It's all communism at the end of the day. It's all oikophobia. It's the path of least resistance for anyone who wants to sow chaos into your once well-oiled machine, because they have nothing better to do. It's a scam. It's a grift. It's a dry rot in your foundations, and you need to cut it off at the root as soon as possible. Not just keep culling the fucking leaves every time they sprout somewhere else. Fucking listen this time. Listen to the people who warned you. We were right. You're welcome, by the way. We're still here. We're coding for the few people who appreciate us and the things we're coding in the decoding that we do for whatever it's worth. Anyway. Something
that has occurred to me watching all these companies start to dismantle their DEI structures. When you bring out a weapon to fight in a battle and you feel like you have won the battle and you're just going to watch the other side fall and they're going to take time to fall, but you're done. You've done your thing, and it's, you don't have to do anything else for them to fall. There's nothing they can do to come back. You can put it away. So I hope that I'm wrong about this, but I have my suspicions that a lot of these companies are packing up their DEI infrastructure within their company because they don't need it anymore. They've achieved the damage they were intending to do with it, and now they can put it where they can refer to it as just a conspiracy theory later when we complain about it.
Yeah, it's possible.
I would prefer to be wrong about that.
Yeah,
I really would.
I would too, but it's not completely ridiculous. So I think it's possible. What it sounds like is that they basically did this thing, and it was based on this notion, like tabula rasa, like, oh, we're all the same, and everyone's interests are the same, and everyone's capabilities are the same. Therefore, the diversity should shake out like this. And of course, not only do those two ideas contradict each other, but they're completely like not based in reality. And the reality is people go where they want, and some people are different, not just men and women, although mostly women and women, but people from different backgrounds, different cultures, and different races are also different. This is why we don't have an all Chinese basketball team. Because they're different. And they're not exactly demanding to have a team either, because they don't want to, because they don't want to play basketball. They want to program. So, and that's okay. And we have to let people be and stop trying to interfere and micromanage and engineer people in the way that we want. So, I don't know. But I hope that this costs them big, and that hopefully some people learn from it. Specifically, though, the people who thought, that they could just like become engineers and work at Google, even if they didn't like know what they were doing, and they were trying to like do this, fake it till you make it or whatever. They just got in on their DEI. I mean, I don't think anyone would be happy knowing that the only reason why they have a job is because of their skin color or their genitals or whatever. So, I mean, that's just me, but I would assume that most people would be dissatisfied unless everyone's out here trying to get what they can get. Anyway, in related news, I have another story that is... Oh, but I did get a Super Chow. I should read the Super Chows really quick, because they came, but I didn't see them in the Video Ninja. Not Video Ninja, the Stream Ninja. Richard BR, I'm just going to give you guys a Badger Chan here while I read your Super Chows, but trust me, I did get them. Richard BR gives us $5 and says, so ancient Greek people of the Mediterranean don't count in the spectrum of POC now. Well, that's a big conversation for another time, but all I will say is that white people is a term I'm not going to use anymore because it doesn't make sense. And I think it's politically expedient for them to use it. And that's why they can just dispense, like sometimes people are white when it's convenient and sometimes they're not. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense anyways.
Do you know, until the late 90s, it had never occurred to me that Southern Europeans and Northern Europeans were a different race.
Right, but now they're making you see it that way.
Arguably, they're not. I mean, yeah, there's...
Well, and there's Eastern Europeans, too.
Yeah, but
they are also considered a different race.
They at least look the same. It's difficult from the phenotype to tell the difference between a Slav and a Nordic person. But yeah, because Spain was under Moorish rule for some time, and because Italians are a little bit more olive skinned than Northern European people say that they're a different race. Meanwhile, people refer to Africans as Africans, despite sub-Saharan Africans and Mediterranean Africans being completely different races, completely different cultures.
Yeah, see, all of that leaves me in a conundrum because every area we just mentioned, I have DNA from that area in my list of different, like my I always said my heritage didn't include Spanish. I was wrong to a very large degree, actually. And now I have a journey to go on to figure out where the hell that came from, because nothing in the stuff that I have explains it.
I was confused for a Spaniard once. I was at university and this Spanish
I get
student,
confused for everything.
I met a Spanish student and he thought I was Spanish just from looking at me. It turns out there are white people in Spain.
Yes.
There are people in Spain just as white as me. There are people in Mexico just as white as me. Louis C.K. is Mexican. Lots of people don't understand this. That and yet people say it's racist to build a wall between the US and Mexico. A racist wall. Like, does it let white people in but not brown people? Every country has citizens of every race. There's nothing racist about not allowing people from another country into your country, because countries are not the same as races. Cultures are not the same as races. And if you think they
haven't been for a very long time.
Yeah.
You can blame a lot of that on Spain. You can blame a lot of that on China. Like a lot of the trade, you can blame a lot of that on India. And you can blame a lot of that on the United States. Lauren says everybody thinks she's a Latina. Well, I've been mistaken for Mexican before.
Yeah. That's why I don't use those terms anymore, because I looked into some things and it's just, they're not useful unless of course you're trying to divide people. Then they are.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I wouldn't know which group to divide into.
Well, I know, but the idea is to make you feel that way. But okay, anyway. I got another super chow from Meredith G, because this is $5. Thank you, Meredith. And she says, HBR News 438, honey for the badgers. It's funny how illiterate, untalented hacks are so willing to destroy great art and great literature. Yeah, isn't that interesting, right? All right, well, thank you guys for the super chows. I don't think I got anything else. But okay, let's move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. In related news to DEI stuff, you might find this interesting. We have this. So the former diversity, equity, and inclusion head of at Facebook/Meta. Oh, this is such a great transition. Like, we're gonna go right into a story about Meta after this. Crazy.
And this Meta is a very meta story.
It's also a meta story about Meta, yeah. Has pled guilty to defrauding the company of millions. Barbara Furlow Smiles, Smiles, that's the last name. 38 years old, worked for Facebook/Meta as lead strategist, global head of employee resource groups, and diversity engagement. For over 4 years, she's funneled company money into various friends, family members, former co-workers, and other acquaintances under the guise of company-related expenses. Furlow Smiles then attempted to hide the fraud by making fake expense reports and claiming her associates were in some capacity doing work for Facebook. Then she approved fraudulent and greatly inflated invoices. These associates then returned a portion of the funds to Furlow Smiles in the form of cash kickbacks. Quote, motivated by greed, she used her time to orchestrate an elaborate criminal scheme in which fraudulent vendors paid her kickbacks in cash. She even involved relatives, friends, and other associates in her crimes, all to fund a lavish lifestyle through fraud rather than hard and honest work, end quote. Not that DEI, work is actually hard or honest, but okay, stated U.S. Attorney Ryan K. Buchanan. At this time, it is unclear if any of her associates, including her own husband, will be charged.
So we had a person who is involved in a giant grift, scamming a company that exists almost solely to promote that grift,
which is also engaging in its own grift. Money.
Yes, it's just so great. I mean, and as much as I hate thieves and as much as I hate thievery, this was kind of funny. This was just, and on top of that, the fact that she thought it would work. This fake expense reports and claiming her associates were in some capacity doing work for Facebook, that she thought nobody would figure out what she was doing. Well, I'll just make it look legitimate. Where's the work they did? That's a very feminine way of committing embezzlement.
What kind of person would you expect to attract to a job where their job is defined, their position is defined by grievance and resentment? Like, DEI is built on the notion of grievance and resentment towards some kind of a established order that you think you're tearing down, whether it's patriarchy or white supremacy or capitalism or whatever. So if you create a program that is supposed to address it, what kind of people do you think you're going to attract to your program? Could it be people who are interested in serving themselves and don't believe in the concepts of meritocracy? Could it be people that will look at a company like Google and say, you know, I really hate rich people, and you guys are the biggest company on earth. If I steal like millions of dollars from you, I think I deserve it, and I think you have it coming, and I think it's restitution. I think it's, you know, fairness. I think it's justice. I think it's reparations, whatever you want to call it. You know,
sticking it to the man.
Yeah, they're sticking it to the man. So what, like, why does this surprise? I mean, I don't know. I don't think it surprises anyone here, but why would anyone find this shocking? I bet that this kind of fraudulent shit happens in all of these companies, especially companies that have diversity initiatives and DEI stuff. I bet they're losing money hand over fist. I bet corruption runs rampant. I think in any place where you have essentially, yes, a climate, a culture of resentment and envy, you're going to have this. You're going to have people trying to steal, and they're gonna validate it to themselves. They're gonna say, I deserve this. I deserve this.
Yep.
It's worth throwing in a hashtag not all. I would like maybe 90% of the diversity hires that get hired are just looking for a job, and because they're so desperate for a job in these trying times, they just get in and they quietly wonder if they were only hired because of their race. But there's another 10% of people who really are black supremacists or fucking Latino supremacists or whatever kind of supremacists. And it's normal to have an in-group preference for every race except white. But yeah, there are some people who are so entrenched in this ideology that they are everything that people accuse white supremacists of being, or everything that people accuse white people of being when they have anything resembling an in-group preference, which very, very few white people do, not just because they're not allowed to, but because, I mean, why would you? And that's not to say that oikophilia necessarily means xenophobia. It doesn't, by the way. You can have an in-group preference without hating out-groups. Like I say, it's perfectly normal for every race, every culture, every country to be more inclined to understand people of their own culture, people of their own country, and that doesn't mean they hate people of other countries.
No,
you know, but oikophobia exists, and it's difficult to get this through to people who have been conditioned into not just not believing oikophobia exists, but having no concept of oikophobia. And well, I say that, but black people who want everyone to be black, who want to erase white people, or Asian people, or the continental Indian people, anyone who wants to replace all of any other race with their own race. That's not oikophobia. That's actually xenophobia. It's just it's excused by white oikophobes, because they don't see they only see xenophobia in their own kind of people. That's what oikophobia is, and it gets awfully complicated because we don't have words for the things that have been normalized. Yeah. And I know even the word normalized has been normalized.
Been kind of demonized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That's I like I said, I can get into that more on my own channel, but I will. But yes, I agree. Okay, we got to move on to the next one. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. both of these stories. What do you think about the fraud and the firings? Which one came first? I wonder. Maybe there was. I mean, one is Google, the other is Facebook, but like still, probably some shit's going down. Is all I'm saying. So maybe if you're hiring the best people and there was like a little bit more of concern for someone's moral character, you wouldn't have as much of a problem with people stealing from you. All right. Anyway, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. All right. Now we're going to get into something really interesting. Speaking of meta, according to British police, a young girl was virtually gang raped inside of the Meta/Facebook hosted virtual reality game Horizon Worlds. Although no physical damage to the under 16-year-old girl occurred, the police are taking the matter very seriously. Quote, there is an emotional and psychological impact on the victim that is longer term than any physical injuries, end quote, stated one officer working on the case. The investigation has some asking how this can possibly be classified as a Grape crime, and some even suggest that this is a waste of police time and resources. I don't know who would say that. They must hate women. But let's continue. Okay. Home Secretary James Cleverly seems to shoot down these detractors, stating, quote, I know it's easy to dismiss this as being not real, but the whole point
because it's not real.
Yeah, but the whole point of these virtual environments is they are incredibly immersive, the senior politician told LBC's Nick Ferrari at Breakfast program. And we're talking about a child here, and a child has gone through sexual trauma. It will have had a very significant psychological effect, and we should be very, very careful about being dismissive of this, end quote. Home Secretary Cleverly also posits that someone would do such a thing in a video game. Quote, may well be someone that could go on to do terrible things in the physical realm, end quote. Oh no, here we are again. What year is it? The lead for child protection and abuse investigation at the National Police Chiefs Council, Ian Crichley, I think that's how you say it, Critchley, I don't know, mirrors Home Secretary Cleverly's sentiments, calling the metaverse a starting path for child predators, and calls for more policing and new laws to be passed to combat the so-called threat. Okay, I'm going to say something really inappropriate, bad joke, but since this takes place in the UK, could this just be like training mode for like walking the streets of London?
Oh God!
I'm gonna cover what I think you're getting at.
Okay, let me finish the write-up. Okay, despite these sentiments, the UK officials admit that prosecuting the alleged criminals would be hard, seeing as under the law, sexual assault requires physical contact with the victim. Senior police investigators say this is not the first report of a sex crime in Horizon Worlds, and that there have been reports of virtual theft as well. Meta has yet to comment on the situation.
How do you thieve someone virtually other than the... Anyway, let me count the ways, my friends. Let me count the towns and villages and urban districts across Britain where to this day there is still an epidemic of rape gangs drugging and grooming British children into a life of sex slavery, and we're not even allowed to talk about it because the police will arrest us for being racist. And these miserable fucking tools, these absolute weapons in the so-called police force, have the raw nerve, the inflamed goddamn audacity, the bright scarlet chutzpah to go on a nationwide manhunt for gamers or just social media users. It wouldn't be the first time, of course. That seems to be all they do at this point. We don't have real cops anymore in this country. We just have vice cops. They don't solve crimes. They don't investigate violent criminals or terrorists. They just go online and collect the IP addresses of people who are having any kind of fun that's not state approved, or engaging in any kind of verbal or lexical exchange that's not state approved. And it's always men and boys who happen to be engaging in activities of which the state does not approve. And they're never innocent until proven guilty. They're guilty until proven not British. That'll be why they're going after these anonymous meta rapists, because they're anonymous and presumed white British by, just statistical likelihood. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if these virtual rape gangs turned out to be of a certain heritage that I can't mention lest the police break down my door. And once they're identified as such, it'll be, whoops, sorry everyone, the trail went cold. There's nothing we can do. Shut up, you bigots. She was asking for it. You know who else they might be? Bear in mind, it's the internet and it can be anonymous. People can use any made-up avatar they like. So the case in question could well be women or girls. It could be girls who go to the same school as the alleged victim, bullying other girls because they think they're sluts or whatever. Hell on any planet hath no fury like girls jockeying for power over other girls. And if that turns out to be the case, we're never hearing about it again. The police will just frame some innocent autistic teenage boy who happened to be on the same server one time. The police are only doing this because they think there's a fighting chance of that being the case. They're not here to apprehend terrorists. They're here to strike fear into innocent British men and boys while they kneel in obsequious servitude to anyone and everyone else. For fuck's sake, people kill each other in games. They walk up to you, point a gun between your eyes and go blam, and you die. Over and over again. That's very often the whole point of the game. And even children as young as like 5 can play these games and go, ha ha, I killed you, yay. And it's fine. It doesn't seem to traumatize anyone because even a 5-year-old can tell the difference between reality and a game. And not to give anyone any ideas, but how the hell has that been okay for the past few decades? But suddenly it's different when it's rape. I'll tell you why. It's because men don't get raped by women, according to British law. Women do indeed rape people all the fucking time, but they'll never be charged with it because of our long enshrined 2-tiered justice system. If women do it, nobody's allowed to give a shit. If only men can be charged with doing it, it's the worst thing in the world. That's why rape is considered worse than murder. Even in a pretend virtual context where you can switch the bloody thing off whenever you like. Why didn't she do that, by the way? Why didn't she switch the bloody thing off when it looked like she was going to get raped? That's a highly controversial question, isn't it? You're calling me a rape apologist. Well, maybe you should pay attention when Muslim grooming gangs are saying it about the children they actually rape in actual real life. There, I said it. Fuck you, I'm saying it. Break my fucking door down, you cunts. I'll be waiting with a gun and a pack of sandwiches. Well, with a sharpened spoon and a pack of sandwiches. Rule Britannia. Fucking come at me, bro.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't get your hands on a gun there, can you? It's they don't exist in the UK, so they don't have to worry about that. I'm gonna make a set of other points about this, and the first one you guys have heard me say a million times, and I'm gonna say it again: don't let your kids use the internet unsupervised. So this person is 14 years old in a virtual reality. What a social network and hanging out with people from all over the internet who could be from anywhere in the world, who could be from, any culture, any background, they could have criminal backgrounds, they could be somebody other than who they say they are, they could be pedophiles. You never know, because you can't see who is on the other side of the connection. You can't prove that you can see who's on the other side of the connection. And it's even more true now than ever, because now there can be fake video that looks like a real person that you're interacting with. And you're not seeing who really is on the other side of the connection, right? So 14 years old is too young to be on the internet unsupervised, 17 years old, and 364 days. Too young to be on the internet unsupervised by parents. Not at least, be in the same room with your parents, right? That's what kids should be doing. Period. No excuses. Parents don't have an excuse for this. It's like letting your kid run around downtown in an urban area unsupervised. It's a dumb idea. That's the first thing, right? And that's probably, out of all of this, the most important thing. Second thing is, the reason it is impossible to rape somebody online is because of why rape became a crime in the first place. Because it is basically just an assault. It is an assault. It is beating somebody up in one way or another. It is using force to subdue an individual and intimidate them, right? That's all it is. And the only thing that made it a separate crime from other forms of assault is that it could create a monkey wrench in the life of the individual that was victimized and in the finances of her family. So it's assault plus theft from the victim and from people who are not directly involved in the crime. Right? Rape became its own crime because either the victim would become a burden on her father, who would have to support her for the rest of his life because she couldn't get married, or she would become a burden on her husband, who would have to support her for the rest of his life, knowing that she could have a disease or could have become pregnant with the child of the rapist, and that she's always going to have been, psychologically affected, and everything's going to change in their relationship, pretty much forever. And it was considered so traumatic to women, not just because of the idea that women were more psychologically fragile, but because of its lasting effects during a time period when women didn't have the level of control we have today over becoming pregnant, didn't have the level of control we have today over carrying to term and giving birth, and didn't have the earning capacity that we have today. Wasn't equal to men. It wasn't as likely for a woman to earn equally to a man, and women didn't have to, because we were expected to do other things, and so we didn't have to do the same things that men did. So that's why rape that doesn't involve physical contact online is fake. It's not real. And I will say, you can't call that rape, because there is no physical contact. There is nothing even approaching the threat that is constituted by rape. And there is nothing approaching the emotional effect, the emotional impact of having your physical body subdued and having control over your physical body taken away from you by another person. And anybody who's been mugged versus having something stolen from them in a game knows the difference, even if you've never been raped, right? It's also why it is as much of a crime to do it to a man today as it is to do it to a woman, because the crippling effects from history are not as dramatic on women as they used to be, but they are more dramatic on men than they used to be, right? So now you do have the situation of like the UK and other countries. The UK is not the only one that don't punish women when women do it. But in any case, that's the second thing. It is physically impossible for imaginary rape to be the same as real rape, because you cannot give someone an STD, you cannot get somebody pregnant, you cannot destroy somebody's ability to get married, you cannot do any of the things that led it to be a separate crime, right? And the third thing that I will say about this is that if they find out it's just a bunch of stupid kids that did this, and they were all unsupervised, then, all of their parents need to be held responsible. It's really time to start cracking down on parents who allow their, not the kids themselves, but on the parents who allow their kids to go unsupervised and do stupid shit. Right? It is sexual harassment to treat somebody that way. It is a sex crime. Rape is overused as a term for a sex crime. But I wouldn't want somebody doing something like that if, over the protests of, any of my kids when they were kids. I wouldn't want somebody to ignore their boundaries, and I wouldn't want my kids doing that to somebody. And as a parent, I raised my kids not to do that kind of shit, right? And because it's if you want to be in an environment where you're trying to be social with people, where you're trying to play games with people for fun and not to be mean, then that is counterproductive. And if parents are not teaching their kids that, and they're letting their kids go unsupervised, they're using the internet for a babysitter, and their kids are going out and creating emotional trauma, teaching somebody that's younger than maybe should have experienced it, what it's like to be sexually harassed and that kind of thing, then the parent is at fault for that behavior because they taught their kids that, or they allowed their kids to learn that from an environment their kids shouldn't have been alone in, and then they allowed their kids as loose cannons to go in and hurt other people's kids. And if we were holding parents accountable for kids' misbehavior, then parents might start parenting their children, and maybe the next generation would be better off en masse. And those are it. Those are my 3 talking points, or 4. I don't remember how many, but yeah, supervise your kids on the internet.
Yeah,
and it's bullshit to call this rape, even though it might be considered sexual harassment. And the community needs to start holding parents accountable when their unsupervised children do harm.
Yeah. All right. So I got some super chats. I don't think I'm gonna do the last story, just because of time constraints, and it's not really that big of a story, anyways. It was just about some new Netflix documentary that apparently is eerily similar to Gone Girl. But I do want to read these super chats, and then we'll do the patron show. So I got a super chow from Richard Bier for $5, and he says, police will jump on a very vague claim of this nature, but the alphabet agency with prior notification that someone is a danger can't find a reason to take action. See Nashville and Perry, Iowa incidents. And then he gives another 5 and says, is there an account that one girl was made into kebab meat and mixed into the tile grouting? There is an account that one girl was made into a kebab meat and mixed into tile grouting. I hadn't heard that. And then Allison left a comment. I think she wants me to read it, so I'm gonna read it out because they're into the whole VR thing. She says the game, so she knows about the game. The game is 18 plus. They don't have these protections because there aren't supposed to be minors in the game. They also have a 4-foot boundary that has to be disabled to allow strange avatars to enter your space. No explanation of the actual action that they're referring to as gang Grape. Did it even involve exposure? No idea. One time I went into VR chat and they were lolly girls with erect penises running around getting in my face.
Oh,
but I wasn't. Yeah, I mean.
Well, that just makes you want to hang around.
That's what I was chased around by tiny lolly girls with, erect penises in their hands.
Sounds like a nightmare.
But I think they were just trying to get a reaction.
And to stop smoking.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can block people in that too. You just they just turn invisible. You can't see them.
That's great.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm okay. I recovered.
But I would still say, well, that's another reason why your kids should be supervised online. If something is 18 plus, you don't want your kids in there. You should know what they're doing and be able to say, hey, that says 18 plus. don't go in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It would make sense. Well, I guess that's basically it for that. So let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We are now going to head into the patron show because I got to pick up the wife in about an hour. So, oops, sorry about that. That was a mistake. What? Oh, the music. We're going to be looking at this article. That's the wrong one again, Brian. Get it straight. This article from Fandom Pulse. Tetris child prodigy gets too good and hits impossible kill screen in 38 minutes while mainstream media laughs off his world record. Oh, and I got another super child, so I should go ahead and read that one out really quick. This is from Richard Bier. He says, for $5, Hannah, it's likely that if it was other kids, then they'd have the same kind of parents who yell at the teacher for sending a note home about the kid's behavior or grades.
Probably, but that's why those parents need to be fined by the state. They can yell at the state all they want, and the state will tell them, fine, your fine is now 30% higher. That's how that works. Like if we're going to be policing all kinds of other things, right? We're policing speech, for crying out loud. You can't say what you think on the internet in some countries. Then at least hold parents accountable for not supervising their children.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we're gonna head into the patron show now. So I want to thank you guys for joining us on the news show, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the patron show. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed in the show today. There are links to the original sources in the description, and please share this video because sharing is caring. Thanks guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we'll talk to you all in the next one.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.